Hello and welcome to The Rating Room, your weekly ticket to the world of cinema. I'm Jay and I'm joined as usual by Andy. In today's episode we are discussing the science fiction film Interstellar.
The Rating Room. The Rating Room.
Earth faces an environmental catastrophe, threatening humanity's survival. In a desperate attempt to secure a future for the human race, a former NASA pilot, Joseph Cooper, embarks on a perilous interstellar mission alongside a team of scientists. They travel through a mysterious wormhole near Saturn to explore potential habitable planets in distant galaxies. That's a lot of big words there, but that is Interstellar in a paragraph. Firstly, Happy New Year to you, Jay, and to everyone listening at home. But my first question will remain the same as it did last year, and that is, have you seen this before, and what do you remember about it?
So Andy, this is one of my favourite films, and I don't know if I'd say it's in my top 10, but it is definitely one of my favourite films, and I've seen this so many times. I've actually got this on Blu-ray, and I watch it on Blu-ray, and it's also on streaming platforms, and I watch it. It's one of those films that if I'm flicking through the channel, wherever it is, I will just carry on watching it. So already, so last year, I'll probably watch this about 5 times before watching it this time as part of the podcast. And also, I like it that much, Andy, that I listen to the soundtrack a lot, but also I will check out clips on YouTube and just watch my favourite scenes over and over again. So, what about you, Andy? I've told you kind of like that I've watched it numerous times.
That is a glowing endorsement. I think let's see if that still is the case when we get to our scores at the end. Now, this for me is a brand new film. I've never seen this before, and I'm thinking back. This may be the first time on the Rating Room where I'm a newbie, because I know there's been a couple of Hanks films that you hadn't seen before, but this was brand new for me. So it came with your glowing recommendation, so I was really looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I hope you wasn't disappointed, Andy. And obviously we're going to talk about the film in a little bit later on. But yeah, it's definitely first, because from memory, Andy, going back to season 2 for Tom Hanks, there was Captain Phillips and Catch Me If You Can. So this is definitely the first time. How did you feel about going into actually, not watching the film in terms of, we're recording an episode about it?
Quite excited, actually, because I guess even with the ones we've seen in the past, we're obviously looking at it through modern eyes. So particularly in the Bond season, we talked about how things maybe were fit for purpose at the time, and you see things differently as you grow older, etc. This, I don't have any preconceived notions, so it was a real clean slate. So that I was hoping was going to give me kind of that clarity. I'll judge it on its merits and not from previous viewings, as it were. Not to say that you would in this case, of course, because I know your integrity is not to be questioned, but obviously you've got a good memory of it and you know it well enough, so you probably had an idea in your mind of what your viewing experience was going to be like this time round.
Yeah, because I actually watched it probably about 2 or 3 weeks before watching it this time round, because I came across it on TV. So I have watched it quite recently before watching it as part of the pod. So Andy, did you go into it completely blank? Have you seen any trailers before, or kind of had any hints what the film was about?
Very, very little. And I knew of it, and I'd probably seen like a poster, but I didn't remember any trailers. So my knowledge was basically Matthew McConaughey and space.
Okay. That's quite exciting, I think, going into it. So, let's get into it then. Like always, I like to kick us off with the box office. So the budget was $165 million. The box office was $647 million. And when you adjust the box office in today's money, that is just over $840 million. Now, when the film came out in the US weekend box office, Interstellar secured the second spot. Now, it conceded the top spot to Disney's newly released film Big Hero 6, which is a film I actually pleasantly surprised that I liked it. I like that one.
Yeah, it's a good one. I watched that over Christmas, actually. But despite its initial ranking, Interstellar faced challenges in claiming that number 1 spot, and it gradually descended down the charts over the next 19 weeks.
It did, but it was competing against films including Dumb and Dumber 2, The Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 1, Penguins of Madagascar, which is a film I remember we've talked about briefly on one of the episodes, and Horrible Bosses 2. And Andy, I've got to make a confession. Out of those films, I don't think I've seen any of them.
I have seen Dumb and Dumber 2. That's a pretty good one.
I've seen the first Dumb and Dumber one. I never got around to watching number 2.
It's good. It's more of the same. You know, they're just older and dumber, I guess. But it's absolutely fine. I've not seen the Hunger Games Mockingjay. I've seen the first 2 Hunger Games, but I've not seen either of the Mockingjay films. Don't remember Penguins of Madagascar. I mean, obviously I know who the Penguins of Madagascar are because I've seen Madagascar, but I've not seen their specific film. And I've not seen any of the Horrible Bosses. It's too much of a reminder of work, isn't it? You don't really want to be... I jest, of course. Comment. I've got a fantastic boss, if she's listening.
The Hunger Games, I'm like you, Andy. I've watched the first 2, and then that was enough for me, whereas the missus has watched all of them. And I don't know now, actually. I'm just thinking, I'm sure the prequel is either coming out or has come out. I would need to check that.
I believe it was the back end of last year, if memory serves. I seem to remember us talking about it at some point, for whatever reason. But back to Interstellar. It was the 16th highest grossing film in the US box office earnings. The top grossing films that year were American Sniper, The Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 1, Guardians of the Galaxy, Captain America the Winter Soldier, and the Lego Movie. So that's quite the list. Now let's dig a little bit deeper. So the film Interstellar was released in 2014, directed by Christopher Nolan, and the soundtrack composer was Hans Zimmer. That's a name we've mentioned a time or two in previous episodes. Now, Steven Spielberg was actually originally linked to direct the film, but the studio needed to change their plans because Spielberg moved his production from Paramount to Walt Disney Studios in 2009. Now, Christopher Nolan obviously got the nod, and this is the 9th film that he's directed, and it was the first one after the brilliant Dark Knight trilogy.
Indeed, and apologies, I've got a slight cold, so if my voice is a bit funny, listeners, I apologise. So Nolan is known for being a leading filmmaker, and we've discussed some of his films before, especially the Dark Knight trilogy in our sequel special, and his films have grossed billions of pounds and dollars, and his most recent film was obviously Oppenheimer, which was released last year. I can say that now, 2023.
Can indeed. We are recording in 2024 as well as releasing in 2024, just for those continuity buffs out there. So there's not much of a lag between recording and release. But back to Nolan. He co-wrote Interstellar with his brother, Jonathan Nolan. They have co-written, let me get my English correct, several films together, including The Dark Knight, The Dark Knight Rises, and The Prestige. Now, Nolan spent 4 years working on the script and even went to great lengths to learn about the scientific aspects by studying at the California Institute of Technology.
That's some dedication there, doing a bit of research and studying. So Jonathan Nolan, you'll probably be aware that he created a TV series, Person of Interest, and he also co-created Westworld. Now he's currently developing the Amazon Prime Video TV series adaptation of Fallout, which is due to be released this year in 2024. Now, Andy, Person of Interest is one of those TV programs that I enjoyed the first few seasons, and for whatever reason, I then stopped watching it. So I don't know if that's a program you watched.
It is, yeah. I watched it start to finish. Really, really enjoyed it. I think the first few seasons were definitely stronger. It's one of those where, and a lot of TV shows are guilty of this, they kind of stretch it out just a little bit too long, don't they? And they kind of, it's almost like they're running out of ideas almost, and the main bulk of the story's been told. So at some point, you just got to know when to end it.
Did it have an ending, or was it cancelled? Do you recall?
I mean, it was that good, I can't even remember it. I know I must have enjoyed it because I stuck with it till the end, but I can't remember exactly how it ended. But yeah, a very good show. And Westworld as well is a show that I enjoyed season 1 and then persevered with, and it got gradually worse, in my opinion.
Westworld was one of those programs that I probably watched half of season 1 and I just could never get into it. So I binned it, but I'm looking forward to Fallout.
Did you ever watch the original, I think it was a movie, wasn't it, Westworld, back I mean, I say, did you watch it back in the 70s? And you wouldn't have watched it in the 70s, although I could make that joke, of course.
No, I never watched that. I was familiar that there was a film, so I don't know if Westworld is classed as a remake or a sequel. I'm not too sure. Like I said, I only watched probably the first few episodes, maybe the first half of Westworld. I like the premise, and I thought the first few episodes was quite interesting. So I don't even know what was happening when I stopped watching it. So I don't know if that, again, I don't know if that was just cancelled or if it kind of had that, the run and a nice clean finish or not. I'm not too sure, but that was a program I believe used to be on Sky. So we sometimes have Sky, sometimes we don't. We play around with a subscription with that. So again, that might be one of the contributing factors why I stopped watching Westworld. But I just remember I didn't think it was as good as all the hype. It was because it was really pushed when it first came out.
Yeah, there was a huge deal. It was a HBO, wasn't it? I think it's a huge American show with a big budget. So the hype was real, but did it live up to the hype? Not sure. Jury's out for me. I enjoyed it until I didn't. That's the best way of putting it. But let's get back to the world of Interstellar. So Matthew McConaughey, as mentioned before, plays Joseph Cooper, retired NASA pilot, widow, and father of 2 children. McConaughey, of course, has won an Academy Award in the Best Actor category for his role in Dallas Buyers Club, which is, again, a film that looks brilliant, but I've not actually seen.
Ditto. And it's, as part of this research, Andy, it is very different to what I thought it was. So I've read about the character that he portrayed in that film, and I was surprised what it was actually about. So it wasn't what I imagined it was, originally thought it was about. Now, Anne Hathaway stars as NASA scientist and daughter of Michael Caine's Professor John Brand, and Hathaway has obviously previously worked with Nolan in the Dark Knight Rises film.
The film also starred Jessica Chastain, who played Cooper's daughter Murphy, better known as Murph throughout the film. She becomes a NASA scientist and figures out the all-important formula. Don't worry, we'll get to that as we talk about the film. And Hans Zimmer, of course, a name we've mentioned a few times, reunites with Christopher Nolan, having worked together on the Dark Knight trilogy and on Inception.
So Andy, I just want to take a minute here because I think we spoke about it off camera, haven't we? That the Hans Zimmer, and I obviously alluded to it earlier on. As we know, he's obviously a brilliant composer. We have touched on him a few times. And I did pre-order this limited edition soundtrack on vinyl recently. And each one is individually numbered. So there's a one of 15,000. And I can't remember which number I got. I think it's in the 11,000s. I got. So the record includes this 4-page booklet as well, and it's got notes from Christopher Nolan in and Hans Zimmer. So I was reading that over the Christmas period. Now, I thought it was really interesting because they talked about how the soundtrack was created. So Nolan wrote a short story about a father leaving a child to undertake an important job. Now, this 1-page document included 2 sentences of dialogue, I'll come back, and when. Now, Nolan then asked Zimmer to spend one day composing some music for the story, and he ended up playing the music to Nolan. Now, Zimmer spent one day writing something for the story and produced this 4-minute piece involving a piano and an organ. Now, Zimmer played it to Nolan, and Nolan was really pleased with the piece, and then he explained the full plot and the concept of the film. Now, I thought this was really interesting because at that point, Nolan hadn't finished writing the script, and on the soundtrack. So I don't know if you can get this on, say, the streaming platforms, but on the vinyl special edition one, you actually can listen to the demo piece that was produced on the record as well. And it's called Day One, and you hear it in the film, and you hear it at the end of the film, the actual piece that he wrote. And I found that really fascinating, how even though he didn't know this was a science fiction film, the the soundtrack, it feels so science fiction. I find it so amazing.
Yeah,
and interesting that
the soundtrack definitely fits the film, and it baffles me how you can get to that conclusion. Not that I wouldn't say it's necessarily a science fiction sounding piece of music necessarily. It's not, if I was going to stereotype science fiction, it wouldn't be how I would imagine it sounds. But it definitely fits, and you would think you'd need to know a bit more than just 2 bits of dialogue and a 1-page story to make the music fit. I don't know if we spoke about this on air, but there was the documentary about the music of James Bond, and I remember Hans Zimmer was involved in that because he obviously did the soundtrack for No Time to Die, and I think he will have known the story when he did the music, because I think the crescendo of leading to Bond's inevitable death, there's clips of him playing that as the kind of the film plays in parallel, and it's very, very well done. So, but that's knowing the story and knowing what you need to achieve, whereas this is a bit of a stab in the dark, isn't it?
it is. And like you said, it's not necessarily a science fiction sound, but it fits a science fiction film really well. And I think it has quite a unique sound to it as well. But like I said, I listen to the soundtrack quite a lot, and there's some really good tracks on there, which has made my Spotify movie soundtrack playlist as well.
Yeah, it's got particularly since the Bond theme, I've listened to more and more Hans Zimmer over time, and it's got some skills. But let's get back to it. He delayed Zimmer. Delayed the release of the soundtrack until 2 weeks after the film premiere to ensure that audiences got to listen to the score in theatres. And final bit from me before we get into the film proper is that Interstellar was nominated for 5 Academy Awards and won 1 in the category of Best Visual Effects.
The film opens with a dusty bookshelf and an interview with an elderly lady. Now, I know you haven't seen this TV program, Andy, but when this started, this kind of older person talking about a story that has happened in the past is kind of similar to Band of Brothers. So if we do Band of Brothers in the future, where we discussed it, that beginning is like, oh, it's very similar to the Band of Brothers beginning.
Okay. That's good to know. It brought me, I guess, somewhat linked to Band of Brothers is when we talk Saving Private Ryan, and obviously you've got the older character going back to the wartime.
Yeah.
So yeah, amazing how these things all link together. Now, one of the first things I noted was Matthew McConaughey's character. I'd not caught his name by this point. Obviously, we know it's Joseph Cooper, but at this point, I wasn't sure who he was. He's having a bad dream, and there's some sort of crash involved. So this, the plot was really thick. Then you've got this old lady looking back in time. There's a crash. There's a bad dream. Lots of things happening right at the start, to kind of set the scene, and lots of dust, which will become more and more prevalent. And Murph we're introduced to as a young child, not the Jessica Chastain version. She's a child at this point. She's got a ghost.
She has got a ghost, and there's lots of dust, Andy, and that's presently like what my house is, Andy, all the time, unfortunately. Very dusty in my house with 2 dogs, bringing lots of mud in the house. Now, I don't want to keep labouring at a point, but I think straight away, for me, the soundtrack, the brilliant soundtrack is just evident already. It's just there in the background throughout the film. Now, they get a puncher, but as they're about to fix the puncher, you get a drone flying across, and then you just see Cooper and Murph and the son, Tom, I think from memory, start tracing the drone through a cornfield, and I just thought that was brilliant. Now, later on we find out Murphy gets suspended from school because of the new educational books that state the Americans never got to the moon, and it was a hoax to bankrupt the Russians, which I think is really interesting because some people actually believe that in America.
Yes, that's sadly some people do believe these sorts of things. This is the point where I was really starting to think, what exactly is going on here? Because there's a lot of pieces that in my mind are not quite fitting together yet. Between the crash and the dust and the drone, and now this Americans never going to the moon thing. It's like, where exactly is this going? later on, or following this, they're watching a game of baseball, and the game suddenly stops because this huge dust storm arrives. Murphy forgets that a window's open, and they go into a room and they find this strange dust pattern on the floor. Cooper figures out that the pattern is actually binary, and it's coordinates. So of course, naturally, we want to figure out where it is and where to go. So off he goes to find where this is, only Murphy has snuck into her dad's car. So they're on this journey together.
Yes, very naughty Murphy is. Now, they arrive at the destination, and it turns out to be a secret NASA base. Now, NASA officials start telling Cooper that everything that they're working on, and there's going to be a mission. They give a lot of detail. I'm not going to go into detail now, but they start giving, explaining exactly what they're working on and how long they've been working on everything. And they ask Cooper to fly the space shuttle. Now, Murph is obviously upset because her dad's agreed to go. And then Cooper, he says to her that, he says goodbye to her, but she's obviously very sad and angry. And then Murphy mentions that she's cracked the code as well, and it just says stay, S-T-A-Y.
Yeah, but my note is this is pretty much her fault, isn't it? Because she was the one that keeps banging on about this ghost, or these ghosts that she has. And she's the one that snuck into the car to go to this secret NASA base that the coordinates were leading to. So what did she think was going to happen? Just being a bratty little teenager. But Cooper is
so if she never left her bedroom window open, the binary code would have never been present in her bedroom.
There you go. Yeah, it's all kind of fallen into place, isn't it? Literally, in the case of this dust, it literally fell into place as binary code. But Cooper's off. The mission is underway. They launch into space. We find out it's a 2-year journey to Saturn. Now, I have my first interjection here from the wife. She was watching this with me. We don't talk much about the wives in these latter episodes because she didn't watch any of the Bond films with me, but she did watch this one, and she said, "When was this film made?" She assumed it was the 90s because she thought the special effects were a bit shoddy, which I kind of agree with her at this point. Particularly, it didn't look great, and it's also particularly surprising considering it won the Academy Award for Best Visual Effects.
I can't believe that statement, Andy. I cannot believe that statement. 90s films, special effects. I'm shocked. I was lucky I'm sat down, Andy, and feeling a bit poorly today because I will be outraged, Andy. 90s special effects. I can't believe it. And like you said, they won an Oscar. So did your wife watch the whole film?
She did, yeah.
So don't tell us what you scored the film, but my wife didn't watch the film because the first time we watched it, she hated it. And every time she sees me watching it, she goes, "I can't believe you're wasting 3 hours watching this rubbish film." So when I started saying, "Oh, we're doing Interstellar for the podcast," and she was like, "You're watching that again?" I said, "Andy's not watched it." And she went, "Oh, I bet he's not going to like it." And she absolutely hates it. So every time she walks past, it's like, "You watching that again? You watching that again?" So I'm intrigued to see what you think. But so it's interesting, your wife did watch it. 'Cause it is quite a lengthy film, isn't it, as well?
It is, yeah.
Which obviously we're going to cover in our ratings later on in rankings.
It's funny you mentioned that because about an hour or so ago, I was downstairs and I was like, "Oh, just to remind you, I'm cooking. I was cooking at the time. Just to remind you, I'm recording tonight with Jay." And she said, "Oh, what are you recording tonight?" It says, Interstellar. And she said, "Oh, you've got to live through that again, have you?"
I don't feel the love. This is like one of my top films, and I've said obviously how many times I watched it, and I just don't feel the love at the moment.
Yeah, well, the wife verdict doesn't matter this series, so we can discard what they think. We'll get to what we think because that's really where it's at. But back to the film. On this journey to Saturn, they have a bit of a space nap, as I think that's the technical term. I'll call it a space nap. And they're approaching the wormhole.
They do, and they make it through the wormhole, and they then start discussing what their next course of action is, which I find a little bit peculiar, because you might have thought they might have done that beforehand. But they start plotting out what they need to do, and they decide to go to Miller's planet. Now, I really like these scenes. I think this water planet scenes are brilliant, and Cooper makes this rapid descent to save time, because at the big, when they're in orbit, they're talking about how much time they're going to lose, and I can't remember off the top of my head how long it. I can't remember. He says like every 20 or 30 minutes, or maybe an hour, is X amount of years. So he just bombs down. Obviously, he's got his kids at home. Now they find the wreckage, and there's a massive wave coming, and originally I think their sensors picked up that it's like mountain ranges. So the soundtrack, this song is actually called Mountains, and it turns out the waves have been mistaken to be mountains. Now Doyle doesn't make it back to the ship in time, and it's gone completely pear-shaped. Mission failure is going to cost them decades. So I don't know what you thought of this scene, Andy, like the special effects and just what, the water planet, because it's very different. It's not water planet as in water world. It's a very hostile environment on this water planet.
I was okay with it. I was kind of a bit indifferent. It was, I didn't think it was egregious, but it was good that it was not just an Earth with different colours, because some films tend to be lazy like that, don't they? And you assume that every planet is just like Earth but a little bit different. The grass is blue and the sea is yellow, or things like that. So I was okay with it. The things I wasn't okay with though were Tars and Case. They were the two like robot companions. Just a bit silly for me. Really didn't help my enjoyment of the film.
What did you find silly? Because they have like a personality to them, don't they? They're both very different. What did you find silly? Was it the way they acted, or how they were physically like structured?
I just think the whole presence was completely unnecessary. Just if you, yes, it's science fiction, I get it. So there's going to be things that are not realistic, but there's taking it too far. Like, you could replace those characters with other humans, and you have that human interaction, and it makes it a more palatable film. But when you've got just the serious tone and then silly robots, it's like, no, it just didn't work for me at all.
I didn't mind the romance per se. I think the design of them could be better, because I don't think they're very even though one of them goes and says brand, and it's kind of like rotating, isn't it? Kind of like one in but rolling kind of thing. So I don't think they're very mobile. Originally, Andy, I believe when they were writing it, they were going to be more humanoid, like robotic, but then they changed the design, I believe, in the final version.
I'm not sure that would have necessarily helped matters. I think just don't have robots. That would have helped things for me. But they're there anyway, so we're stuck with them. They leave the planet, and you mentioned earlier about the time taken. Well, it's been 23 years when they're back to the spaceship. Romilly, who had stayed behind, he's been awake quite a lot of the time. He's only taking sleep when needed, and boy, does he look tired.
He does look. He's aged a lot, poor bloke. Now, Cooper listens to the messages from Earth. Now, Andy, this gets me every time. I get always tearful in this scene. And he watches his son's video messages. He discovers that he's a grandpa. A later message then informs him that the grandpa, as in the grandpa back on Earth, has died. The baby boy Jesse has died as well. His son then says like a final goodbye, and then Murph comes on screen, and it's the first message that she's actually sent, and she says to him, it's a special one because it's her birthday, and they are now the same age as when he left. So that's obviously the 23 years that Andy, you just mentioned.
Indeed, yeah. A couple of points here. Tom is a mumbler, so there's this poignant video. You say it's quite emotional. I couldn't tell what he was saying for a lot of it, and I didn't actually understand the point where he said the baby had died. I'd only worked that out later on, so that came as a bit of a surprise for me. And the choice of actors, being the same age when there's an 8-year age gap between them in real life, I think was a bit strange. So Jessica Chastain and Matthew McConaughey are clearly not the same age. So this is a bit of...
So your kind of point there, Randy, is the same kind of point as in going back to James Bond, Sean Connery and Harrison Ford in one of the Indiana Jones films where they play father and son. Is that what you mean, where the age difference is actually quite similar?
Yeah, it just doesn't... Well, no, just the fact that she's now the same age, but clearly Cooper is a lot older. So, McConaughey trying to pass as a younger man, like, come on. Just being a bit vain, isn't he? So yeah, just some points I picked up. But back to the film, Murph is making some progress with the formula, like she said she would, and she starts to query the professor and his workings.
Yeah, and back on the spaceship now, they're debating which planet they should try next. Now, Brand, after a bit of probing by Cooper, comes clean about her relationship to Edmonds as well, and they decide to go to Man's planet instead.
Yes, all the way through it's been saying that she's not got any family or links or anything, so this was a bit of a twist in the story. She wanted some space, didn't she? Let's be honest.
It's been a long time, Andy. If you count all the years that they've been away, so it was 2 years space travel, and now it's jumped 23, so it's a quarter of a century.
Yeah, but they're not real years, aren't they, for her?
No, and actually we found out they actually left years before, didn't they? The original mission, so it'd be even longer. But yes, she was asleep, obviously, for 2 of those years, and then fast forwarded 23 years.
See, they could have modified those robots. That could have helped her out a little bit.
Now, back on Earth, the professor is on his deathbed. So this is Professor Brand. And he makes a confession about the mission and the formula. Now, Murph wants to know whether her dad knew about this, because it turns out that the formula is wrong, and the professor knew that already. Now, Murph is angry and upset here and sends a message to the space shuttle, but they don't see it because Cooper and Brand and co have already departed to go to Man's planet. Now, obviously, I think she's right to be upset, but I think it's quite harsh on her to start thinking her dad did it on purpose and just to get away. I think that's a bit harsh.
There was nothing to suggest that he knew when he left.
No,
and I think if he did know, I don't think he'd have gone. Based on their interactions.
No, yeah, I agree. And the fact for him, it's still, it's like, pretty much yesterday, isn't it, when he left her, because he's been asleep and he's been on the planet, whereas she's had 25 years, 25 years to come to terms with it, but she's still very angry and bitter about her dad leaving her. Anyway, so a quick one for me. Michael Mann. They wake up from his deep sleep.
Yeah, and I noted it's Matt Damon. And I thought, well, he's going to save the day here because he knows how to grow potatoes on Mars using his own shit. I thought that was a clever comment from me, but then when I did some research, I found out that The Martian actually came out the following year, so it was after Interstellar, so I sound like a bit of a fool now. But anyway, he tells them about the planet that they can call home. One note was that there's 67 hours of light and night per day.
That's a very long day. Imagine working those days. Martian, brilliant film. I really enjoyed The Martian. Andy, what's your thoughts on that?
I like The Martian, enjoyed it. I know it was absolutely panned, wasn't it? I think, did it feature in some comedy awards, even though it's not a comedy film, because people thought it was that bad, but I thought it was all right.
I believe they changed the category to ensure that they won the appropriate awards. So they changed it to like the comedy section, because I can't remember what film it was competing against. So they deliberately changed the category, because it is a funny film, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got its moments. Enjoyable. I think it's a decent film.
It's not Step Brothers funny, is it? But
no, it's not. It's not proper funny, but it's got its. You don't watch it for the comedy.
No. You watch it to see if he dies at the end. But getting back to Interstellar, do you know that's not a true film, Andy?
The Martian?
The Martian.
Not real?
No.
You mean I've been growing my potatoes like that for no reason?
Remind me never to come round to your house for dinner, especially if you're having chips or something. No, I watched The Martian years ago, and I really enjoyed it, and I knew it was based on a book. And you know, when you type into Google, you start typing into something, and it kind of predicts like the rest of the bit that you're searching. And I remember typing in The Martian, and I remember seeing something like, "Is it based on a real story?" And I thought, really?
I'm going to blame the Americans for that.
Don't alienate our small fan base, Andy. Half our listeners come from America.
None of our fan base would be so stupid as to Google things like that. We have an intelligent fan base.
Indeed. Must be to listen to our podcast.
Upstanding citizens, a lot of them.
It's like my driving instructor always said to me, it's not how you drive, it's all the other dicks on the road that you have to be careful of. And I think that is a fair statement. So, let's get back into the film. We digress. Now, Brand gets the message about her dad, and Cooper then comes over and hears about the mission being a failure, and Plan A was essentially a sham. Now, Man then pipes up in the background and says, yes, your dad figured it out years ago, and essentially said human people can't compute it. So this mission was always the plan B, was always the way they needed to go forward. Now, Cooper and Man, I know I'm jumping around and I'm just skimming over because it's like a nearly 3-hour film, so there's lots of things happening. Now, Cooper and Man go to secure the base camp, and also they need to secure some modules as well. Now, Cooper's obviously planning to go back home because he's found out this mission is a failure, and he just wants to get back to his kids, who are obviously adults now. Yeah,
he's definitely getting homesick. And speaking of home, Murph goes back to her childhood home and into her old room, which is looking very much the same as when she left it, has to be said, and that will come into play. Meanwhile, Tars and Romilly are checking out the old robot to see if they can obtain the piece of equipment they need.
And your point, Andy, about their room not being touched, I can't remember if it's her brother or her sister-in-law mentions that, your bedroom hasn't been touched since she left. So it's an important thing, isn't it, actually? That's obviously going to come in later on, why that's important. Now, Man attacks Cooper. I always thought there was something wrong with Man. There's something off a bit about Man. And he attacks Cooper and pushes him down this cliff edge and tries to kill him. And it turns out that the planet isn't actually suitable for humans. And he just wanted saving. Now, Murph just thinks her dad has abandoned them all on Earth as well. So she's still coming to terms with that revelation. Now, it keeps jumping between Earth and Man's planet. Now, back with Man, he ends up cracking Cooper's helmet visor here. And just before this bit happens, he's headbutting the visor. And Cooper says something like, this is like a 50-50 chance you're going to crack your own. And he says, that's the best odds I've had for years or something. I thought that was really good. And that just shows how desperate he is just to get off this planet. And he just, 50-50% chance of dying or living. He's happy to take that. You see Cooper struggling to breathe as well. And he does make it to his transmitter as well.
Yeah, Man kind of turning on was a bit of a twist in the story for me. Man's robot explodes, kills Romilly, destroys the base. But Tars has made it, so, good for him.
I don't feel like you say that genuinely, Andy. I feel that you're reluctantly saying yay there, tongue-in-cheek for poor Tars.
Tars will not feature on any of my top character lists, that's for sure.
It's lucky we're not doing any character rankings this season.
Yeah, Tars wouldn't make the cut. Back on Earth, though, Murph has started a crop fire to distract others. So there's a lot going on between the two. Well, I say the two worlds and the rest of space.
There is. It keeps jumping between two, doesn't it? And now back with Man, he tries to dock with the spaceship, and it's an perfect connection. And he ends up blowing up himself and damaging the ship. And the music is just kicking in here as well. And I find this quite a gripping scene, really. So I don't know what your thoughts are, Andy, with this particular one.
Gripping's not the word I would use. There's the thing that does it for me is the cheesy dialogue, where obviously he's got to dock, and is it Bran that says it's not possible, and his response is no, it's necessary. I mean, come on, that's just taking cheesy to a whole new level.
I love that saying. I love that, and that just feels like I know your missus said a 90s special effects, but that just sounds like a kind of a quip from like a classic 80s action film or something. I love that bit. It made me laugh. It's a bit. Cooper does try to dock with the spaceship, and you see Bran pass out during the shuffle. Essentially what's happening is they're matching the rotation of the main spaceship with the shuttle, so it's going round and round and round, and Bran passes out part of this process.
Yeah, I had a problem with this, and basically Bran passes out. She's got the helmet on, so that should be helping her regulate her airflow or whatever. Cooper's fine though, and he's not wearing one. So come on, which is it?
I would put that down, Andy, to the fact that he's a trained NASA pilot, and he doesn't need help. He probably could go for a spacewalk without an astronaut outfit. He's that well trained, and he just wants to get home to his kids. So
Yeah.
He's got all that going for him. Not doing it for you.
No.
Is that another?
My tone is changing throughout the course of this episode.
They're close now to the wormhole, and they've decided they need to send one of the robots through the wormhole so he can transmit the data that they've collected as part of the mission. Now, this is going to cost them a further 51 years back on Earth, so time is just flying by for the humans left on good old planet Earth. And for them, it's been a matter of days, I'd probably guess, in terms of real time. It's not been long.
No, it feels like a short mission for them, but the proverbial lifetime for everyone else. But Ranger 1 goes with Tars, and then Cooper's Ranger also detaches, so he says goodbye to Brand. So he's, would you say he's offering himself as the sacrificial lamb here?
He is, yes. He's sacrificing himself for his kiddies and ensuring Brand can get up. This is an emotional bit for me as well, Andy. It's just an emotional film for me. Now, meanwhile, Murphy's clearing some stuff in a room, and this is very flashing between what's happening in the wormhole and back on Earth. So at the same time, Cooper then has to eject from his ship, and he's falling kind of through space, but then it's kind of some warped place, whatever we're going to talk about in a second, and it turns out to be in Murphy's bedroom. So he's not back on Earth, but it's been set up in an image of Murphy's bedroom, I think it's safe to say.
Yeah. My question here at this point, and we'll expand on it, are we saying that he's gone so far forward in time that he's actually gone back in time?
So I think, the way I interpret this is that he is essentially where he is now, but they've constructed something from the future in the present day, and then he's looking back in time from that, is how I interpret it.
Yeah. It's not. It's beyond my comprehension.
So this scene, Andy, my wife happened to walk past when this was on, and she was going like, "Oh, it's the bedroom bit again with load of bedrooms. This bit is just so silly." And she just like walks past. She just hates that bit, because that bit is one of the bits I watch on YouTube quite a lot, because the music's brilliant, and I think it's an emotional scene as well. And she just like, "Oh, you're watching that again." It's I find it really, I get tearful on this. The amount of times I watch this, Andy, I still get tearful on this particular scene. And essentially, the film is about being a dad and, leaving your children behind. And he has all that regret that he's gone and left them to, save the world, but he's had to leave his children to like fend for themselves with the granddad. So yeah, it just hits me all the time, this does. And I know you don't feel, you're not feeling this particular bit, but I do think it's, because this bit now, so unless you've picked up on it beforehand, I never picked this up, but this is the first time now that you kind of understand everything that happened in the first few scenes and how it's all interconnected, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the big reveal.
You find out that it was Cooper who left the stay message as well. And also, you find at that point in time, when Cooper's finding out, Murph realises it was her dad who left the message as well.
Awful reveal. I hated this. This was so ridiculous. So he's gone forward in time to go back in time to leave a message, but he's looking at it from the future, something that he did in the future that is in the past, and now Murphy's realising this in the present. I mean, come on. This is poor. It's really poor.
I love it so much. And I don't know if it's because I've watched it so many times, Andy. But like I said, I personally think that where he is now in this wormhole is his present day. And he's looking back over time at all the important points in her bedroom. And then he is essentially sending a message back in time. And that is what I think that is. So, and it's all interlinked, in terms of the binary code. So essentially he's obviously the one that did the coordinates because, for the drone ship to find, at the beginning. So he has left the what is it called? Cookie crumbs? Kind of,
yeah.
Like in a fairy tale.
The breadcrumbs, yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
And he's using the Morse code as well with the watch.
He is, yeah. I could see this. We're not a visual podcast, but we record visually, and I can see Andy's disdain.
My exact note at this point, because I've tried to hide my true feelings of this because I want to wait for the ratings at the end. But my note that I wrote at this point was, do I have to carry on watching this? I thought this was a really, really poor reveal. But the film's not over yet, so let's muddle through and then we'll get to some ratings. But Tars is back and has made contact with Cooper in the fifth dimension, and they work out that they can send a message with the quantum data, and this is where they embed it on the watch via Morse code. So this is the kind of the crux of the science, isn't it?
Yes, no. And Murph, using that information, eventually cracks the code, and then it kind of fades to black, and Cooper wakes up in a hospital bed, and he's 124 years old. And he's on Cooper Station, and he makes a comment to say, oh, they've named it after me, and it turns out, no, they've named it after Murphy Cooper. And it's orbiting Saturn as well, and his daughter is still alive.
Yeah, and this kind of just emphasises our point. He's gone forward in time to go back in time, but now he's really, really far forward in time again. So, like, what is going on?
It's yes, I know we've had a time jump. But it's his present. It must be so horrible being in that situation, Andy. We're both parents, and imagine that you're. So what's the maths on that end? Andy, you're better than maths. If he's 124, did they say it would be? Oh, I don't think they ever said how old she was. Because
I would guess she's about 12.
Because they said there was 23 years, didn't it, when they would be the same age. But I don't know what her first age was.
So let's say she was 12 and they were the same age at around 35. And now he's 124, so she would be about 100, 101.
Yeah, good innings. And for him, it's just been, a few days, a few weeks. Obviously, you don't know.
So he's still his 30-something form.
Yeah.
Although, I
Yeah,
think he
yeah.
was about 40 at the
He's
time, wasn't he? So he's
middle-aged.
about our age.
Yes, our
my
age.
age.
Yes, our age. We find out Cooper's house is now a museum, and Tars is there. So the friendly robot that Andy loves has survived. Now Cooper changes some of Tars' settings, which I think is a little funny thing. There's a few remarks throughout the film, and I find that quite funny. Now Cooper goes to see Murph and a family, and this scene, Andy, it always gets me, and it does hit me all the time with the music and everything. And Andy, before we finish, I do want to say there's two things that I think, I won't say grate me, and I'd be interested to see what you thought of this. Now, the two things that jump out to me whenever I watch this film is his son is just being stitched up because it's all about his daughter. So apart from, the scenes that you see his son in the film, I don't ever recall, considering how many times I've seen it, what the outcome of the son is. And second, he probably has 5 minutes with the old Murphy, and then she kind of dismisses him because she's dying and she wants to spend time with her offspring. And I always thought that was weird because she's held all that resentment for all those years, and then she's obviously realised that actually her dad had sent the message and never actually abandoned her. And then she probably has 5-10 minutes tops before she kind of sends him on his way. So those are the two things that always get me from watching this film, to think the son's been stitched up, and that kind of feels really rushed at the end.
It does, and you think he might want to stick around to get to know the rest of the family as well.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
And he doesn't seem to care about them.
Yeah, and so Cooper and Tars sneak off, and there's still a spaceship, and they go off and find... they go off to find Brand, who we see is all alone on the planet.
Yeah, and I will leave you with my final note to bring the film to a close, and that is that maybe Cooper will take advantage of Brand's grieving state and give her that space that she was craving. That would be a happy ending, wouldn't it?
The Rain Room.
That is the film. So I don't know. Is there anything you want to discuss, Andy, before we get to our ratings? Any kind of burning questions?
No, let's get to ratings, and then we can discuss our feelings on the film. So you mentioned at the start, it's a film you've seen many, many times. You watched it, was it 5 times last year, before recording? So I'm expecting a pretty high score, but what score did you give this out of 10?
So yeah, Andy, considering how many times I watched it, you would expect a high score, and this is a bit of a jumble, really, because it's the first time I've given a 10 out of 10 on the podcast. Out of all the episodes we've done, and from memory, you've given 2 or 3 10s out of 10s, I think, from memory, going back. So it's the first time, and it is one of my favourite films. When I say that, I don't mean necessarily it's in my top 10, top 20, but considering how many times I will watch it, and like I said, when you're channel surfing and it comes on, whatever it is, I will just stay and watch the rest of the film. I do really enjoy it. Apart from, like I said, about the ending, for me it doesn't move it from a 10. I do enjoy it, even though I think we'll probably watch some more Christopher Nolan films in the future. It's not his strongest film. But for me, it is a 10 out of 10 film. For me, I do love it, and I do like sci-fi films. And I think even though it's a sci-fi film, it's different because, like I said, essentially, the story is about a dad and his kids. Well, his daughter, really. His son's just been pushed to one side. But that's what I think, this story's about. So, Andy, 10 out of 10. You must be near 10 out of 10. This is a classic. I know you've had some negative comments throughout, but surely it must be around there for you.
Well, you've argued your case very eloquently. Obviously, one of your favourite films. It's certainly your favourite film of the podcast so far across any series, because it's your first 10 out of 10. Now, my 10s, Skyfall was a 10 out of 10 for me. How does it compare with that? Forrest Gump. You mentioned this is one of those films that when it's on, you just sit and watch it. Forrest Gump for me is one of those. But this really compares to Moonraker. I've given this 3 out of 10. I hated this film. I came away afterwards really disappointed with it. And me and my wife would just kind of looked at each other afterwards and was like, what the hell have we just watched? It's, I've talked about the poor reveal, the whole forward in time, back in time, poking the bookcase nonsense just ruined it for me. You've got the robots, which are absolutely pointless and stupid, that just don't add anything to the film. You've got Matthew McConaughey, who's one of the best actors on the planet. I'm a very, very big fan of his. Wasted in a role like this. He's better than this. And it was more just a feeling of just utter disappointment. Really, really disappointing film. So the film that came to mind is like, do I prefer this to Moonraker? And I'm not sure that I do. And Moonraker, I was, adamant we would never talk about ever again. And that was a 3 out of 10. This was also a 3 out of 10. Very, very disappointing film.
I'm staggered, Andy. So you said your wife thought the same as well?
She hated it.
So I suppose out of the 4 people that we've mentioned, including myself and our wives and you, there's only me that likes this film.
I surveyed a number of people, that number being 2, other people in preparation for this, and I said, have you seen Interstellar? Oh, which one's that? It's the one with Matthew McConaughey. Oh God, I don't like that at all, was one response. And the other response, I don't remember, but it was just kind of it was all right, that kind of nonchalant. So you're the only person I know who's given this a glowing review. So it'd be interesting to see what the professionals think.
Well, we are the professionals, Andy, but you mentioned what do other people think, and I can tell you, Andy, IMDb has this as 8.7. So if you rounded it up to 1 decimal point, it's 9 out of 10. But we don't. It is 8.7 out of 10. So I think that's a strong case. And I think, going back, I do think it's not necessarily his strongest film in terms of Christopher Nolan. But for me, it's still one of my favourite films that he's done. And I just really like it. And I don't know if, because I said I've got I've got the Blu-ray, I've got the limited edition vinyl as well. If they made pop figures, Andy, those little vinyl figures, I'd probably buy them as well. I might. And where you're saying you'd rather watch Moonraker, which I can't believe you're saying that, because I know the disdain that you have for Moonraker. I'm sure, without looking back at all our previous scores, this is probably the biggest rating difference between me and you, because when you gave Moonraker 3 out of 10, I think I gave it 5 out of 10, so that was only a 2 score difference. And this is a whopping 7.
I think
I might have to look at some stats.
The biggest discrepancy I can think of is The World Is Not Enough, which I think you gave a 5 and I gave an 8. And I was correct about that one as well, and you were definitely mistaken. In this instance, IMDb is closer to your score than mine. Rotten Tomatoes, just for out of curiosity, 73% on the tomatometer, 86% audience score, so it's clearly a very popular film. You mentioned the budget, and we'll get into that in a second as well. Very successful film. So maybe it is just me and everyone I've spoken to and your wife that are the minority here.
I didn't ask any other people because I don't have friends, Andy. And not many people. I work with mostly women, so I'm generalising here, but not lots of women like sci-fi films. So, but this is where we need our listeners to come in and kind of back one of us up. Do you think this is a good film? Do you side on like my 10 out of 10 or the 8.7 or the 86% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, or are you leaning towards Andy's lower 3 out of 10 or the 73% in terms of the actual ratings on Rotten Tomatoes? I am intrigued because we got such a variation, Andy, between what I've scored and what you've scored. And in season 3, we're mixing things up, aren't we? We're doing different films. So I'm intrigued to see, is this going to be an isolated discrepancy between our scores? Because generally, like you said, World Is Not Enough was the biggest one. But again, that wasn't much. We largely, I'd say consistent within one or two, even though when we do our actual tables of rankings, we will get movement, but our scorings aren't too far apart usually.
Yeah, this is the closest we've come to a verbal fist fight. I guess we'll find out over the coming weeks and months, because obviously for season 3, as we are calling it, it's more genre specific. So is this down to the genre? Is this down to the director? Is this down to is it just one of those films that we just can't agree on for whatever reason, or are we going to get more? I guess we'll find out. But shall we get into just tying this off with a bow with our main feature, the whole point we're here, and that's the rank bank. So Jay, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so as usual, we kick off with the runtimes, and as I've alluded to several times throughout the pod, the film was around 3 hours, and I can tell you it was 2 hours and 49 minutes of pure sci-fi entertainment. So that goes in at number 1 on the runtime ranking, and that's above Die Hard of 2 hours 12 minutes and Elf of 1 hour 36 minutes.
Yeah, it certainly felt a lot longer. But recapping your points earlier around the box office, so the budget for this was $165 million, which is way above anything we've seen in this season so far. Worldwide box office was a whopping $647 million. Adjusted in today's money, it would be just under $841 million. And that is way above what we saw for Elf and Die Hard, like way more than double what we've seen so far.
Yeah, it is a massive blockbuster compared to the other two films that we've seen, even though they're both obviously successful films, Elf and Die Hard. Now, as we've mentioned before, and Andy's just mentioned a few minutes ago, we're doing different genre rankings. So this is our first sci-fi film of season 3, which we've titled the Mixtape season. And that means Interstellar goes in at number 1, 10 out of 10 for me. No other films in the sci-fi chart as of week 3 of this season. Andy, do you want to... I don't know, I don't want you to recap really what you gave Interstellar.
I agree with you in terms of the ranking. It's my number 1 sci-fi film of the season so far, with a whopping 3 out of 10. But let's end things there. I don't want to talk about Interstellar anymore. So this is our first episode of the new year, and just for continuity purposes, we actually watched the film just before Christmas, but then we're recording in January. So this will, as you're hearing this, it will be the 10th of January, I believe. We're actually on the 5th of Jan as we're recording today. So we're only a few days behind the times. So it's still very much the new year for us. And since it is the first episode of the new year, I thought we could just have a little chat about some of the things we're looking forward to in the world of TV and film. So Jay, what are you looking forward to in 2024?
So I just want to say, Andy, split it out. TV shows, Fallout I mentioned earlier, so that's based on the game. So I don't know if you've ever played a Fallout game before. That's being made by Amazon Studio, so I'm looking forward to that. That's coming out this year. The Lord of the Rings. Now, the Rings of Power season 2's due out, and I'm intrigued about that one because I quite liked season 1. I don't think it was anything amazing, but I'm intrigued to see how season 2 develops. If it's something that I enjoy, I'm going to continue to watch them as long as they don't get cancelled. But if it's not great, I might knock it in the head after season 2. And the last TV show is Squid Game. Now, I don't know if season 2 is definitely coming out this year. I couldn't find much information about it. But I did watch the Squid Game challenge. So I don't know if you saw that one, the real life one, Andy.
I only saw clips of it when I was watching Gogglebox. I've not seen a full episode yet, but it did look quite intriguing.
Have you seen Squid Games?
Yeah.
Yeah, so they built, I saw like a documentary of it, and it showed you they actually built like the full sets in these big warehouses. So I actually watched that with my 12-year-old daughter. The reality TV one, and it's really good because she came quite attached to some of the contestants in there, and then when those contestants ended up dropping out and getting eliminated, she was very disappointed. So it was, we enjoyed it because she's obviously not seen the original, because I believe the original is probably an 18, I'm guessing. And she's obviously only just turned 12.
Pretty graphic, I think, isn't it, in places?
Yeah. Yeah. So, Andy, I know we're coming to an end, but me and my daughter and I had this confusing conversation because she said, can I watch Squid Games, the original? I said, no, it's too graphic. And she was saying, like, is it like this TV program, like, you know, with the contestants? I said, yeah, but obviously in the TV program, they die. And I said, like, you know, in the I can't remember what the game's called, you know, the big doll woman, and she turns, and like, if you run in, stop, start.
Is it the red light, green light?
Yes, that's it. And she says, I said, that game's in the actual TV program. I said, like, in the TV program, they obviously get shot and they die. And she went, like, what, get shot, like, really die? I went, yeah. So they die, you know, the characters die. But she thought I meant the actors died in the TV program. So she was going, like, are you sure they really died? What about the police? Like, you know, why didn't the police go? I said, what do you mean? They're like, you know, it's a TV program. It's like, make you believe the people playing them died. And she was like, are you really? So, and I said, like, what do you mean? Like, why are you getting confused? So she was saying, like, if Dwayne Johnson was in it as, you know, The Rock, does he die? I went, well, yes, his character dies, but not the real The Rock dies. And then it finally sunk in. So there was a bit of confusion backwards and forwards because she was like,
you thought she thought you'd been watching a snuff film.
Oh, so yeah, we were going backwards and forwards then. And films, Andy, just before I ask the same question to you, I'm intrigued to see The Penguin. So that's obviously the Colin Farrell returning to the makeup chair in the spin-off for the Matt Reeves, the Batman film, where we've discussed the Batman film a few times at least. Dune Part 2, I'm looking forward to seeing that one. I've seen the trailer, looks really good. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga is the one that I'm probably looking forward to the most. I got Sam watching Mad Max Fury Road the other month, and we loved it. And when the trailer dropped for this one, I sent it to him, and it just looks really, really good. I'm really looking forward to that one. And I don't know, I've put this in, Andy, because I don't know if it's coming out 2024. I believe it originally was going to come out in 2024, but I think because of the strikes, I believe what I've read and heard, there's a bit conflicting release dates, is Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse. Now, myself and my son, we loved the first two films, and we watched the second one again. We watched them both in the cinema, and we watched the second one again over the Christmas period. It's really good, so we're looking forward to the third one of that. What about you, Andy? What TV shows or films that you're looking forward to?
So, like you, Squid Game Season 2 is on my list. I've not seen The Rings of Power Season 1 yet, but I really need to get my arse in gear and watch that because I think that looks really good. Stranger Things is the one for me, but again, I'm not sure if that's 2024 or is that 2025. If it's this year, though, I'm looking forward to it. And again, I don't know if that's delayed because of any writer strikes. A couple of films on the list just to add to what you mentioned. You mentioned The Penguin. I'm looking forward to Joker 2. I think, you know, based on the first Joker film, which was tremendous. I'm hoping the sequel is the same. And Gladiator 2. We've been waiting quite a while for that sequel. So that will be interesting to see what that's like. And is this the year that we finally get some news on a new James Bond?
So, Andy, two things there, Andy. Stranger Things is probably the show that I'm most looking forward to. And like you said, don't see any release dates for the season 5 for that one. You mentioned James Bond, and I'm going to say something, but I've got no kind of evidence to back this up. Have you seen the TV program The Bear? No. I think it's on Amazon. No, Disney. I think it's on Disney Plus. It's about a bloke, and he's a chef. Anyway, that actor, he's an American bloke, and he's been linked to playing James Bond. So his name has not come up before, and he's been linked. But he did a social media video. Oh, well, he probably did a video, and it's been put on social media where he actually came out and said he doesn't think an American should play James Bond. And then he kind of mentions at the back saying, like, come on, you know, I'm looking forward to the next film, and it's been years, what's going to happen? And that's the, you know, how we all feel, isn't it, about James Bond?
Yeah, it's been a while now. Just while we're on the topic of it, have you seen any of the Road to a Million 007 series?
No, because I've just heard really bad things about it, so I haven't watched it, to be honest. And I've got so many programs I need to watch. I didn't want to start something where I've heard so many negative things about it. I didn't want to waste my time. If you tell me it's good, if you've seen it, then I might watch it. But
again, I've only seen clips. So I watch Gogglebox, which
okay,
is really good if you want to see what a show's like, because you get to watch clips and you see what other people think of it because they're watching it. It's not so good if you want to avoid spoilers on things that you wanted to watch. But they watched at least one episode, I think, of it, and I thought the premise was that ordinary people would be going on quote unquote missions to then lead them to a cash prize of £1 million or $1 million, whatever it is. That doesn't seem to be quite what it is. From what I've seen on the clips, they seem to go to these locations all over the world and then answer general knowledge questions.
Oh, I thought it was like what you mentioned.
So the
before.
one clip I'd seen, I'm trying to remember the location. It might have been Italy somewhere. It might have been from, I want to say from No Time to Die, the hotel room. It might have been linked to that. I could be wrong, but I think it was a hotel room setting, and they'd made their way there by whatever means. And then there's like a treasure chest on the floor, and they open it, and there's a snake inside this treasure chest. But then there's just a question that they have to answer, so they just have to get either a piece of paper or the iPad or whatever it is from out of the box that's got the snake in it, and then just answer a general knowledge question. Like,
about just general knowledge, or not about James Bond, or
I can't even remember the question, but it wasn't anything taxing. It wasn't. I just think, that's not what I wanted.
So he's like mastermind on location or something like that, isn't it?
It's a really, really expensive quiz show.
Because I thought it was like what you said, and then I thought that the prize would be some money, but also you get to be an extra or something on like the next James Bond film. I thought that. So you haven't sold it to me at all, Andy. I don't watch Gogglebox at all, so you haven't sold it to me. So I won't be
watching it.
But also, why you do some live searching, Andy? Have you seen the news about Amazon Prime though, and adverts?
I've not. No, are they introducing them?
They're introducing adverts to their TV shows. I would have to check to see if they're doing it for films. They've said they're going to be catered, air quotes. So it's going to be different to normal TV channels. And but if you don't want to have TV adverts, you can pay an additional £2.99 a month. And for me, I don't watch much on Amazon Prime. I use Amazon Prime for like next day delivery, but I don't watch much on there.
Yeah.
I watch Reacher and stuff, but it's not worth £3 extra a month.
I mean, I'm annoyed by Amazon Prime anyway, because there's certain things that you have to have a Prime account and then you have to rent them anyway. And then when you rent them, having paid the extra, you only get so much time to watch it anyway. I think it's once you hit play, you've got 48 hours or something to watch it, and then you lose it even though you've paid for it. So that in itself is a bit cheeky. And I was watching Premier League football over Boxing Day, and they put ads in that.
Yeah, you're right. Do you know, have I told you what I did with Amazon Prime? Or was it Amazon Prime Video? Or was it Discovery? I didn't realise, I don't watch much football, Andy, but me and my daughter was watching football on either Prime, and tell me if this is Prime, or it could be on the Discovery app, because I know you've got that as well. So it was Premier League football. Now, when it was half time, I said to my daughter, you can come back in 15 minutes if you want, so you can watch YouTube or TikTok. So I flicked off the TV, walked away, came back in 15 minutes, and they're still talking. So the daughter came down. I said, I thought it was going to be started. I said, yeah, I know. And I sat around like a plonker for another 10 minutes. And I didn't realise when you turn it off, it doesn't keep the live watching. It just pauses where you stopped it. So I would sat around for nearly half an hour wondering when half time. I actually went on my phone and saw that someone scored and realised it was still playing. So I had to go back out of the app to then go back in and select the live watch option. So I can't remember if that was Prime or the Discovery one. We were watching Arsenal.
It sounds like Prime. Well, no, Discovery does keep it at the same place, actually, because I watch TNT Sports on the app. The Prime thing, so I watched Newcastle v Forest at lunchtime on Boxing Day at my house on the app on my TV. Then I went to the in-laws. Now they've got Prime through their Skybox, and so they watched that game, and then they flipped to the next game because it's like a different feed for the 3:00 kickoff, and it was Bournemouth v Fulham. So I arrived. It was like 3:10, and they're watching the build-up. And I'm like, "You're not watching this live?" They're like, "Oh yeah, we're just waiting for them to kick off." I'm like, well, "They kicked off 10 minutes ago. Like, what are you doing?" And it had taken them back to the start of the show, which had started at 2:30 rather than 3:00.
It's easily done then. Easily done.
Needs to be thought out a little bit better, I think. What needs to be thought out as well is how we're going to get out of this podcast episode this week, because we're rambling away. So shall we put an end to proceedings and thank the listeners for tuning in?
Yeah, so as I've mentioned, you can send any questions, suggestions, feedback that you might want to have about Interstellar or any of our podcast episodes that we do via our social media channels or by reaching out to us at theratingroom@gmail.com.
Yeah, we've got a website for those of you who haven't visited, www.theratingroom.com. Got all the information that you'll need on there, and our YouTube channel at The Rating Room.
So as I've mentioned, you can find us on all major social media sites by searching at The Rating Room. And make sure you do subscribe to all our channels as well, so you can stay up to date with our latest news.
Yeah, so this episode's given me a bit of a headache. Almost feels like I've got a hangover. We'll see you next week.